Good to see you guys. I guess I'm grateful for the opportunity to visit with you. And I've been assigned the subject of stalling. Those of you who are on the internet, you don't have the sheet that we handed out to everybody. And but we'll just, it parallels, it quotes and parallels what's in the rule book. Because if we're ever going to come to a situation where we are consistent in stalling, then we need to go back to the rule book and we need to work through it, period. That needs to be where we start and stop from. A lot of people add, delete, they find, and in dealing with stalling, for my own personal situation, the first thing on here says, stalling must be removed from wrestling. That comes from the NFHS Wrestling Casebook. Two things will kill the sport of wrestling. One is blood, if we don't address that situation. The other one is boredom. Now, the blood situation's the home management. We've got to try and take care of that. Too few of them do that. That's another issue. But the boredom thing rests, with three separate and yet distinctly connected entities. First is the coach. The coach, by rule, it says, quote, they are to teach, quote, an aggressive style of wrestling, requiring his wrestlers to work for a fall at all times. You and I both know that that's not the case. That is at certain times in the match, and then they will stop and go to, now you need to preserve the win or whatever they do. There are Hall of Fame coaches that are masters at being able to do that. However, that's not what, by rule, they're supposed to do. Second, the wrestlers, they're to work to score at all times, and this is critical. This is where we come in, because we need to encourage them. And when I say encourage, that's by the way we call things. Encourage them to work for a fall at all times, to work to score, whether they're on their feet, whether they're on top, whether they're on bottom, they need to work to score. And lastly, third, the officials are to make sure that stalling is consistently recognized and called and penalized without hesitation. Okay? And that's where people get reputations for calling stalling early or waiting a long time. And, I guess it boils down to me for one thing. If I cannot recognize when someone's stalling, I should not be refereeing wrestling. Flat out. If I can't tell when they're trying to make it look good rather than trying to score, I should not be officiating. Okay? So, and I don't know how to sugar and cream or whatever. I don't know how else to put that. If we don't know, if we're not sure, if we can't tell, then we either better find out or we better not do this, because that's critical. We got to be able to do it. If we can't recognize it, then we can't very well call it. And it's you got to recognize, not rationalize. You have to recognize, not rationalize. You got to be able to recognize and label it what it is, and not rationalize, well, this kid's an Eagle Scout, and, he sold Girl Scout cookies to help his little sister, and I don't care about that. Those are all rationalizations. Or they're not in really good shape, or they are in good shape, or blah, blah, blah. I don't really worry about that. I simply look at, because I don't know all those things. I don't know all those things. I've been in seating meetings where coaches bring those types of things up, and I love them. But that's irrelevant. Okay? We need to be able to recognize and then be able to call what we see, period. Not for the reasons it's happening. I don't care. That doesn't matter. We just need to recognize and we need to call. Okay? Each wrestler is required to make an honest attempt to stay within the 10-foot circle and wrestle aggressively regardless of position or the time or score of the match. And that we can handle a lot of that in the pre-match visit. As we go in before the pre-match and we check their skin and all that other stuff, we can tell them what we expect. That we expect the match to be exciting. We expect the fans to get their money's worth, and that I'm going to encourage them to do that. And they don't need to worry about what the other team's doing. Just concentrate on what they're doing. Work to score. And I've told teams also before. I've told them, you know what? I'm not going to see everything you see. But I'm going to see everything I see. And I'm going to work really hard to see it all. Okay? I'm not going to see everything you see, but I'm going to see everything I see, and I'm going to work very, very hard to see it all. So don't worry about that. Trust me on that. I'll work hard, but you work to score. And if they take care of that, we're all going to be a lot happier. Actions to be maintained throughout the match by contestants wrestling aggressively, whether on top, on bottom, or neutral position, and both contestants are responsible for initiating action. Both men must work to score. Coaches are biased. Okay? Coaches are biased. And their judgment is flawed because they care. You know, my good friend Greg Williams taught me that. I remember going to referee a big tournament with him, and I thought I was going to die. I was so nervous. And he told me something that's been of great value to me, and that is, Rob, listen, you know, they care. Coaches care. And little did he know that 24 hours later, I'd be sitting on the mat with John Smith in one corner and his brother Leroy Smith in the other corner as the coaches. And at that time, what Greg said to me was critical to my survival as a human being, because I realized they care. And at that level, believe me, they are not shy about letting you know what they think. However, I kept remembering Greg's words. I kept remembering, you know what? They care. Therefore, they are biased. They are flawed. I don't care who wins. I care about the action keeping going, and I care deeply about them not getting hurt. So that's about all I care about. Other than that, I don't care who wins. They do. So we just keep that going, and again, I look at what it is, and then we just go from there. It's the responsibility to, okay, when a referee recognizes, now this is critical. This is critical. When a referee recognizes stalling occurring at any time in any position, the offender shall be warned. That's the words. All of us have taken the test. All of us have taken the test for years. Years, okay? And we all know about the way they word things on the test. May, might, could, shall. Shall is pretty much, it's got to happen. You know, that's the difference between, you know, some of those questions being wrong or right. But this one, this is straight out of the rule book. When he recognizes stalling occurring at any time and in any position, the offender shall be warned. Okay? Shall be warned. So that's something that all of us have to come to a determination. If I recognize it, I should call it. Flat out, I should call it. And if you're consistent at doing that, nobody's going to get whacked as a coach if you're consistent. Yeah. When the referee recognizes stalling occurring at any time, the offender shall be warned, and thereafter violations shall be penalized when stalling occurs. Look for the call and make it. Ask yourself, and this is critical here, could either guy be scoring? And if the answer is yes, and he's not, then he's making a choice. Then you need to encourage him by dinging him. Whether that's a warning, whether that's dinging him, whatever it is. But you ask yourself all the time, and that is the question that I'm asking. I'm just asking constantly through the match as I'm evaluating what's going on, are you working to score? Now, if somebody's running outside of the 10-foot circle or putting their fanny next to the mat, so the only way they can shoot him is shoot him out of bounds, that's obviously not working to score. So I'm asking myself constantly, could anybody be working to score? Could anybody be scoring here? If they're choosing not to, then by rule, it's my job. Once I recognize that, it's my job to encourage them to do that. Okay? It is stalling. These provisions require the referee to penalize stalling without hesitation. See yourself making the call because it should be and must be made. Again, when we go back to the first premise that I said, that is that two things will hurt the sport. One is bleeding, the other one's boredom. It's our job to keep it exciting. You know, some we don't have to worry about it. Others, we've got to make sure that they're encouraged to work to score. That's it. Okay? It is stalling in a neutral position when a wrestler continuously avoids contact with the opponent. He may circle, but he may not back off. And if he's constantly, we know that there are kids and they'll, you know, coach will come up and say, hey, that's his setup. He wants to back off, and then a stupid wrestler will go ahead and follow, and then he'll shoot. He'll lower his level and shoot. Great. But he can't do that forever and ever and ever. You know, forever and ever with some people it's 30 seconds, for other people it's 5 or 6. Okay? And that just matters. You know, I get that. I understand the sport. I understand what he's trying to do, but he can't do it for a long, long time because that's boring and that's not what we want. Not working to score. Okay? Plays the edge of the mat continually and positions himself to be shot out of bounds. Prevents the opponent from returning to the mat or remaining in bounds. from returning inbounds or remaining inbounds. So if they prevent that, okay, is not attempting to secure a takedown. If they know they cannot, if they know they cannot get away with it with stylish dancing around and avoiding wrestling at any time in the match, they will wrestle. If they know they can't get away with it, they'll do it. And if you get the reputation, if you have the reputation for being one who can recognize and call stalling without hesitation, then your reputation will precede you, and they won't do it. They'll flat out wrestle. They'll stay in the middle of the 10-foot circle, and they'll get after it and beat each other up, and everybody will be excited about that, and the sport will flourish. If we allow them, the only people in the gym that are excited about a kid who stalls and gets away with it are his parents, and maybe his coach. But nobody else really likes that. Nobody else really likes it, okay? Just my opinion. If they leave the 10-foot circle without being touched, it is stalling. So if you have shrunk up inside you with the thought of calling that call, just get over it and make the call, because if we're consistent about making that, we're going to be in a lot better shape. That's the age-old, I would say that's the myth. I would say that is the myth that coaches want to bring up and throw down your throat. Man, you decided that match. They didn't decide that match. No, when your kid stopped wrestling, he decided the match. I simply called what I saw, period. Okay? Fear not, make the call. If they decide not to wrestle, they're deciding the match. That's all I have. Fooled. Oh, there's one thing, obviously I recognize, in standing in front of all of you and standing in front of you in TD land, I recognize that I'm not a perfect person. I recognize that I'm not a perfect official. And there are times when I get fooled, about stalling, when I'm looking at things and I misinterpret that, okay? And so it's a constant evolution even in my own mind about not getting fooled, because it can happen. I've made wrong calls. I made, a terrible call last year at a very critical time. It didn't determine the outcome of the match, because it ended up going into overtime and they decided the match and whatever, and I didn't make any calls there. But at the time, and the coach, to his credit, he walked up and he said, "Tell me what you saw." And I explained what I saw. And he said, "You know what? I have never seen it called that way." And I said, I don't remember exactly what I said. It wasn't flippant or anything, but it was something to the effect of, "Well, I guess now you have," and which wasn't a good thing. It wasn't, and I admit that. And and my assistant, to his credit, was probably a bad situation for him, and he was probably wishing that he didn't even have to be seen around that call. But, as I gave it more thought, I realized, when I worked back through it, I realized, I had blown that call. I'd blown it. So when the coach came, he called me over after the match, after the session was over, called me over, and he said, have you given that some thought? And I looked at him and I said, "I have," and I flat out blew the call. I don't know what I was thinking, but I got fooled. I was thinking the wrong thing. I was concentrating on something else, and that was wrong. And he said, "That's all I want to know. We're great, we're good," and we just went on. So anyway, that's where I'm at with that. Again, that's why I've tried to emphasize those points. And the main point is, it's up to us to keep it going. It's up to us to be able to recognize it, not rationalize it. Not rationalize it, meaning, well, I can see why he's doing it, or this or that. Why he's doing it is irrelevant. If we can recognize and then call without hesitation and be consistent at it, I think we're gonna come closer. And I think we're better than we used to be able to look at our responsibility now, what it is, what are we going to do now. And I think educate ourselves, know what we're calling, know why we call it, and be able to defend the call. If we can do that, be consistent, recognize it, call it, I think it's gonna, we're gonna go light years. There is one thing I was reading too. Some people shy away from a double stall call, and I'm not really sure why. Because, if it happens, great if you can get one or the other, but if they're neither one working to score, feel free to ding them both. Feel free to do it. Some people criticize that. Read your case book. Read your rule book. Thanks very much.